So today is St. Patrick's Day, and I'm gonna be honest. While we do the rest of this, we are pissy drunk. Like, if you notice less structure, it is because I am on vitamin whiskey today.
Oh man, no, yesterday while I was out, I think I went to 2 different stores and got 2 different varieties of Guinness.
It's very important. Like, you can't have
no
one
small amount.
You can't have one version of Guinness on St. Patrick's Day. It almost feels like a small heresy. Okay. Hello, and welcome to Weeaboo Hell.
It's Weeaboo Hell.
I'm Dinar Dale, aka Blind Monkey.
I'm Sam Legault, aka Mute Monkey.
And today we're doing kind of a comparative reading of 2 shows at very different points in the quality spectrum.
But very similar in their, what do we call it?
I guess the core instinct, the core premise. Both shows, the core premise that sort of unites them is that you have a dictatorship within a Japanese high school run by the girls on a sort of hyper-confident, hyper-authoritarian student council. And I think the reason that's fun to do these 2 shows in the same episode is that it really shows the difference that competence can make within a narrow spectrum.
Competence and self-awareness, I think, is the other thing. Because one of these shows, right, because it has such self-awareness, because it considers the viewer the way that it does, is one of the funniest pieces of media I think I've ever consumed. Perhaps the funniest. I'm trying to think of a time when I have laughed harder than at this show, but there are very few things that I can think of.
The comic adds up that way, too. The other show... You know, I'm actually going to jump over the word generic, because I think this one is sort of bad in a special way. But
no, it actually manages to be its own special kind of bad. I don't think it would be fair to this show to call it generic.
In fact, I will say that Armed Girl Machiavellianism sort of breaks a pattern in the past.
Spoiler alert, it's Armed Girl Machiavellianism.
That's and the good show is Prison School.
The good show is Prison School. Just like, we'll get that out of the way.
We'll rip that Band-Aid off right now. Armed Girl Machiavellianism sort of rips off a Band-Aid we've had so far. So far, all of our batches have sort of been bad because they've been ripping off a plethora of things that go before them. And Armed Girl Mach is not exactly original or anything, but its core flaws aren't really theft. It's more ineptitude-oriented.
It has its own problems. Its problems are its own, and I do kind of respect the series for that.
Actually, I definitely would give it that, too. Like, I respect it way more than I did a run on Handshakers or Warrior No Seraph or some shit. Like, someone tried something with this. Okay, tried is a strong word.
Tried is like, I don't want to say tried. Yeah.
Someone
did something.
And action was taken. In the effort to put slightly more positive particles in the universe than negative ones, I'm just gonna start us off with the better of the 2.
Prison School. If you've been listening these last couple episodes, I think I've brought this up at least once per episode. And this is one of my favorite series, basically of all time. I think it's the hardest I've ever laughed at anything, both the anime and the manga, that it did not manage to adapt all of, because I don't think it ever found its viewership. My aim here was to do something of a redemption for this series, because most of the people I've tried showing it to have reacted with some degree of disgust to it. I feel like it deserves a second chance from them, because I do think it is an honestly hilarious, very subversive show that has a whole lot on its mind.
I think, is the word. The wavelength people miss with this is that
they take it at face value.
It's not a horrible show for perverts. It's a show about horrible perverts, and
yeah,
that's like a thread on the scale of irony that I think is missed a lot in discussions about Prison School.
No, absolutely. It is what I like to call a jerk show.
Yeah, it is a jerk show. It is in the tradition of your Sunnies, your Veeps, your CNN at this point. It's a show about bad people.
It all started with Seinfeld. That was the first domino, and Prison School was, back in 2015, I think, the final one.
When you interpret Prison School, you have to sort of imagine that everyone is Costanza to sort of get into the headspace of how you're supposed to process this one, for my money at least.
No, that's entirely fair. I think the key to enjoying this show is to realize that this show is kind of trying to make you its victim just a little bit. And that's going to be kind of a hard point to explain here, but I'm going to try.
If I could take a stab at
it. Oh,
it.
yeah, go for it, yeah.
I think that, you had an interesting tier about how sexualization in a lot of anime works, and essentially this one makes an effort to push it to a sort of point of pain.
Yeah, no,
and not just a point of pain, but like one that sort of organically is integrated into the way that people experience sex and people see sex, and the way that it may have been pushed beyond the barriers of real humanity in most like manga anime shit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's something about this show very, very meta about this show, and I would not otherwise consider it a metafictional show, but something about the way that fan service, right? And like we all know what fan service is. We've all, if you're listening to this series, I imagine that you're acquainted with the concept. The way that fan service is presented in this anime is, I think, very unique to it, because it kind of assaults you with it.
Yeah,
it less presents it to you as a reward for watching this show, like, oh, thank you for viewing. Here is, one of the main female characters in a swimsuit. It's less that and more just kind of holding you down and screaming to you, this is what you want, right? This is what you came here for.
We have an
eat it.
We have like an unconfirmed private theory about this, which is that before this show, which riffs on a lot of common threads in sort of manga anime, what have you, the creator had a sort of high concept series about the blues, the form of music, Crossroads, Black People, the Devil, etc., called Me and the Devil Blues, about a blues folk legend, and
it was really good.
It was really good. It did better than a lot of things, but it maybe didn't do as well as he wanted it to.
It definitely did not find a mainstream following at all. Like it.
Yeah, it was sort of stuck in that
I think it was on hiatus for a very long time until Prison School found some sort of success, and then he was able to keep going with it. So, I'm trying to put myself in Akira Hiramoto's shoes here, right? He's tried his high concept manga series, right? It doesn't find its mainstream audience. He sees what does find a mainstream audience. And then he thinks to himself, okay, assholes. You want your big titty high school manga? I'll give you your big titty high school manga.
I would say he even gives us the last big titty high school manga. He gives it
like the last one that there ever needed to be. Of course, there have been big titty high school mangas since because, I don't think Deadpool, the movie, killed superhero movies, did it? It's the same concept here. So what we have is, if not the last big titty high school anime, then the last one that you ever need to see. It seems to me like it's more of an answer to the genre than anything else.
I think that's fair. It's an answer to genre. It also has just some of... I don't know how I got one as far as saying it. We've said it's a comedy, but like... I would call it virtuosic in a lot of its executions of jokes of humor. The thing is, I don't know, when I watch Prison School, I get the same sort of feeling and how it matches elements that I watch when I watch like a high tier episode of South Park or when I watch The Death of Stalin or something. Like it's...
Oh yeah, no, it
has a grasp of...
beautifully executed comedy.
Everything from like timing to ironic margins like feels like it's on the right wavelength.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite things is like it's an execution of its protagonist, and when you have like a romantic comedy, especially in anime, all the times you often end up with a protagonist who is sort of a hollow shell. And Kiyoshi is kind of a stealth thing that you think...
his name is Kiyoshi, by the way.
Yeah, his name is Kiyoshi. He is someone that seems like he's going to be that for a few seconds, and it becomes clear that he is history's greatest liar. Like, he wants you to believe that he is this noble self-insert, and he just lies to everyone. He lies to his 4 pervert friends, he lies to his central love interest Chio, he lies to his superior secondary love interest Hana. He lies to himself and he lies to God. Oh no, he doesn't lie to Hana.
He does not lie. That's the only
exception.
person he does not lie to, and I think the relationship writing in this show is just absolutely superb in that, but I think we're getting ahead of ourselves right now. The thing that I really would like to begin with, because it's going to be unavoidable, and God, this is becoming a catchphrase for me, but like for Prison School, we need to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
gender politics.
Here we have the most literal gender politics possible, in that this school is reeling with its gender integration, and there's a certain formula for the modern bad guy, the good modern bad guys. There are all kinds of modern bad guys, but the one that tend to land in the, I don't know, maybe post 2013 or so, they generally take this isn't a new invention, this is what's like in vogue right now, right?
There you go.
They take like a sane moral principle, like, I don't know, Thanos, overpopulation is bad, Killmonger, the last 200 years of history are bad, and they take it to the point of bat fuck insanity.
Oh, yeah.
The Underground Student Council in the show, which, by the way, in terms of words are naturally funny, the Underground Student Council is that kind of thing. The Underground Student Council essentially takes, like, the base insight of, like,
Men are trash.
High school age boys are essentially, like, cavemen. And they push that principle just far enough in their actions, like, oh, you've gone fucking nuts. And it's really funny here, and it's very well done.
It's not that they're entirely wrong, is the thing. I think we could back up here just a little bit. This is the politics of the characters in the show. The politics of the show. Because it lays the fan service on so much and so hard. I think it is often mistaken for pandering and for being base and for just being for males. I don't agree with this. And I think I have not a unique perspective, but a
correct
rare one. No, I don't want to go around and
oh, I'm sorry. This is a discursive difference between me and Sam here. He will engage with people who disagree with him, and I will say that I am right and you are wrong and an inferior human being. Which, come to think of it, is sort of a flip side of how we approach, like, politics.
Yeah, no, but, like, we don't need to get into that right now, I don't think. We'll spend the whole
Okay, cool.
episode
So we're not
on
doing a Chapo's Weeb House today?
Chapo's Weeb. You gotta show me your hog, man. What I want to get into with this show and its gender politics, right? I need to share something rather personal, which is the fact that I would identify myself as an asexual demisexual, right?
If you want to be trendy, you can toss the word ace out there. I think
ace is
he's
like
using a bit more precision
fun
today.
Word to that, and I think I have a rare understanding of this show and its sense of humor, because this is a show that bombards you with sexuality.
Bombards is the right vocab word for that one.
In a way that is inescapable.
I'd call it a blitz.
A blitz, yes. And it bombards you with sexuality in a way that is inescapable, and you're sort of forced to live in this little world that you don't want to be a part of.
And I think what works very well about that is, I don't know, when it comes to, like, literature or film, it's essentially about, like, how you use, like, your
tools,
how you use the tools available to you, like, either your your cinematography or your animation or your wordplay, what have you, to not only, like, say the thing literally, but, like, how you cast it relative to other elements. And this show, what I think makes a lot of the humor land for me is that it basically takes common threads of human, like, sexuality and captures that uncomfortableness that's part of growing up, and it's part of, like, sort of the media filtering too. At the same time, it doesn't really lambast them in a disingenuous or puritanical way.
No, absolutely not.
It just shows the way that it's awkward to navigate as a human being.
Painful too. The point that I'm trying to get at is that when you are a person who is at best indifferent to sex and sexuality, the society that we live in is not. It is often inescapable. Conversations about such thing, displays of such thing, right? It often feels violent at times, just how I am expected to think about and talk about and be about sex and sexuality. And when you remove the idea of sexuality, right, from this show, when you act as though, or if you think of yourself as an asexual being, right, as I am, there is something really, really funny about the situations that they create in this show, about how amazingly silly human anatomy is.
I think that is a very good way of sort of capturing the core magic of this thing. Like,
I feel like I'm not making my point as well as I'd like to be, but in essence,
I mean, it's coming across as well as it can in a St. Patrick's Day episode.
Oh, yeah, we recorded this on St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, I'm dying, by the way. I am all the way into cuffs. I might even tag an intro into this explaining that we are pissy drunk, but we'll do that in a bit.
Soldier on,
From the opposite end of the human sexuality chain, I am someone who has lived in the headspace that these characters kind of occupy.
You certainly throw shit at a wall until something sticks.
I think that the way that this show treats the sort of adolescent sex drive is
honest.
Simultaneously, like,
honest in its
honest,
way, but
it's something like honest, uncompromising, hilarious. Yeah, I would say that vibe the show either judges or really revels in that stuff. It just sort of looks at this behavior and says, wow, imagine how Martians would process this behavior. They would assume that they need to install some kind of mass therapeutic session for the people of this world.
No, that's not a bad point. I think I also want to talk about hyperbole here, because this is nothing if not a hyperbolic series.
There is hyperbole. Here's just a functional example for your enjoyment. One of the underground student council, you recall those are the sort of 3 death women that run this high school.
They start out as an antagonist, but the series grows larger as it goes on.
There's one named Mako who is, I guess I would call her a sort of sentient ball of adolescent fetishes.
That is not unfair.
Like, she has the sort of cartoon porn star physique.
Yeah, no,
and
I don't
the whole
think
thing is that
I think if she existed in real life, there would be something very disturbing about the way that she is constructed.
Yeah, it has that sort of Lovecraftian edge, and essentially all of their interactions with her are distorted by the fact that they can't really think with the survival part of their brain, and they interpret all of the violent abuse that she bestows upon them as the best thing that could possibly happen to them.
It's true. Every interaction with her, with this character, that the main 5 boys, who are the protagonists of this series, have with her, are colored in some way by their adolescent sexuality.
For the record, we are sort of positing all this as a review of the sort of the first episode.
The first episode.
A lot of shit happens. The main student
yeah.
counselor girl is a way bigger figure in the rest of the season. We're just talking about what's in the first episode.
She shows up very early. She shows up in this episode, and it's funny. Her introduction is very, very funny, but it doesn't have anything to do with this particular.
She has one of my favorite comic introductions since Yossarian said, "I'm not flying that fucking plane," which is when. Before our main character, who's caught sort of his hand in the peeping cookie jar,
is sent to prison.
Right? I haven't even explained that shit yet. She's describing the student council, which she's on. He doesn't know that yet. And she talked about the student council president, the Crow Master. And
the camera sort of tilts up to her, and then a crow lands on her arm. She looks at the protagonist, and then you don't even need to see what happens next. He's just dragged, bloody and beaten, to the prison. The eponymous prison.
It's fucking great. And I know a lot of times talking about a joke is like dissecting a frog. But allow me to assure you that this is a magnificent frog with strong hind legs and great organs. Like, I am looking inside of this frog, and these organs are phenomenal. These are some of my favorite frog organs. Like, out of all the frogs I have dissected for fun in my time as a part-time serial killer, this is my frog.
When I was done dissecting this frog, I noticed that it was still partially alive. It was that strong of a frog.
Truly a frog among frogs. It could have been a battle toad if it wanted to. Like, that is the kind of frog we are talking about here. One thing that's amusing about this show and its sort of little gender politics, elaborating, very different word. The way it treats its sort of central male cast, they are the only males really interact with in the school, other than the principal, who is his own comic construct.
Yeah, well, we can if we keep going with this series, then we can get to him because he's a rabbit hole.
If we do episodes 2 through 12, we'll come back to the principal. Let's just focus on these core guys.
These 5 guys, because they are the only 6 male characters in this series. I'm fairly certain.
They do a good job of sort of capturing the breadth of the sort of characters you become in your early life.
Absolutely, yeah. Even given what I have revealed about myself this episode,
he still sees shades of himself.
I've been there in small ways to each one of these characters. Yeah. They also, just apropos of nothing, are very, very well realized characters in themselves. I think Gakuto, one of the characters, is one of my favorite characters in manga and anime in general.
Yeah, Gakuto is sort of stuck in this high dialogue register, in that he constantly is not only referencing but imitating sort of vocal stylings of like a Romance of the Three Kingdoms kind of character, which I don't know. You just have to imagine someone that's stuck in a action movie version of Shakespeare, and everything he says, like someone who speaks in Lord of the Rings dialogue. And
you speak more Japanese than I do, but I have one friend who is fluent in Japanese, and when I showed him the first episode of this series, and he is one of the people who I made this episode for because he did not ultimately like it. When I showed him an episode of this series and he heard Gakuto talk, his first thought about the character was, wow, what a pretentious asshole. That is how this character talks.
It is entrenched in how this series handles him, and
it's not entirely apparent in the English translation, both either the subtitles or the dubbing. But in the original Japanese, this character speaks in the most, I guess, if we were to translate it to English, it would be easy to assign a sort of Hamptons, New England, this sort of.
Yeah,
it's like right here.
It's like right on that wavelength, and I'm gonna dissect the frog. I'm gonna explain why Cartman is farting here. The whole thing of Gakuto is that it does encapsulate a kind of pretension that you embrace in your early life, trying to distinguish yourself when you don't really know what the fuck you're doing or why.
Oh god, I remember that shit.
And you think it will distinguish you as a human and mark some territory out for you as a human.
It doesn't. You just kind of look back at it 3 years later and be like, Jesus fucking Christ, why was I like that? I could have had
you think, like, why did I even want that territory? Like, that's not a great place to be in. Gakuto might be one of the more, like, relatable ones of the spectrum in terms of these comic archetypes. Like, the big one. Was it Andre? Yeah. Andre is also a character, but he's more of a perfectly realized set of jokes.
No, I would say so.
Which is fine in a larger cast. So the point is, this first episode of Prison School with these boys and Soul Foxing is like, in terms of the stupidity of early male life, so these guys get on this caper, which they assume is the equivalent of like a core James Bond scheme in their fucking adolescent heads.
Like more like a Mission Impossible thing. Yeah.
No, yeah, I think it's more accurate. It's more like Ethan Hunt is involved. There's identity duplication involved. Only all they're really doing is trying to shimmy
into the girls' locker room
and take photos, which I know might sound like a fucking bathroom peephole thing, but the thing is, it plays their drive behind this for laughs in a way that, to me, is elegantly done, and it fucks up on at least 3 different layers in execution that sort of matches the
plan itself.
The plan itself,
not
yeah.
The scene.
Yeah,
the scene plays out perfectly.
The plan itself fucks on 3 different layers. As it fucks up, they assume the guy who's stuck in the bathroom has sacrificed himself like an honorable warrior, and it's like a hand over heart flag salute, pledge of allegiance, like, there goes a champion of our people kind of moment. It's wonderfully done, in my opinion.
Here was a man.
Here was a man. And there was the first episode of Prison School. Actually, I want to touch on one thing.
Go for it.
Something they use to contrast with Mako. The violence with both of them is funny in different ways. The violence they get off of Mako, it's funny, but the guys enjoy it in kind of a pseudo BDSM kind of way. They're both played for laughs. The violence they get from Hana is hilarious, but they are not getting anything out of it.
No, because they're
just violence.
Shit kicked out of them for reals this time.
And the subtle ways it's animated differently, like the blood dripping off of Hana's knuckles, is fucking perfect.
I think it's because there's an extra level of realism added to how it's animated. The pain feels real. She's much more conservatively dressed than Mako is, I think has something to do with it. And she seems to be striking the places that hurt, really. Like, this is a woman who knows how to fight.
It's a thing that you don't want to happen to you. Because we're all civilians. None of us deserve this. None of us deserve that pain, right? But prison school teaches us how we earn that pain.
How we earn the pain and just why we deserve that pain. I think the first and last thing to say about prison school is that it is an apotheosis of sorts of tropes, of anime tropes. It is a reaction by this author.
No, I actually see what you're saying. Like, it's not just like an empty rejection of tropes. It's like it knows the playground it's in, and it uses all the playground it's in,
and it's asking the viewer to think. It's like, okay, this is where manga and anime have come, right? This is what the general consensus has agreed upon, right? This is the sort of show that you want.
Does this make fucking sense to you?
Does this do it for you guys? Does it? I'm not really sure why it would, so I'm just gonna keep playing around here until I understand. And that is what prison school is to me. It's sort of a conversation with the viewer about what they are asking for in their anime.
I think you have definitely captured something there. I think that it is in a great dialogue with where the whole fucking genre is, and maybe what could be better left behind. And in some moments, even what does work about it. Like, if anything, they have definitely done a fucking high-resolution snapshot of the adolescent brain in a lot of ways.
Oh, absolutely. I think in the last several years, especially, I have found a whole lot of pieces of media in general have done a really, really good job knowing what they're talking about when they're talking about the adolescent mind. I've felt a whole lot like I will watch a show, a scene will play out, or a movie, or what have you. A scene will play out, and I will point and say, yes, no, yeah, they got it.
Yeah, there's definitely a rising standard in that kind of precision.
I remember Spider-Man Homecoming did a really good job.
Yes, that did a masterful job.
I felt a real connection with their version of Peter Parker because he felt like a very real 15-year-old.
Yeah, the Peter Parker in that movie was great. Like, the pairing of dealing with the girlfriend's father for the first time in your life versus like, oh, her father's a literal fucking supervillain. The first time I ever met a significant other's parents, I met this one girlfriend's mother. She told me, my mother has some racial opinions. If you see me and her together, just don't say anything. And I saw them on campus. And walking by her mother, first I see the girl, so I sort of wave to her. Then I see the mother, and I actually just walk past both of them, pretending I was just waving at someone behind them. And for a second, the mother's eyes lock on me like, you. It was great. It sounds bad. It was great. I have a lot of endorphins associated with that memory. Because I'm more trying not to laugh than anything. I think it's hard having racist parents. I think someone else having racist parents, it's just sort of a comedy bit for you. This is my perspective. Maybe I'm just more easygoing in my heart and soul.
My parents are just a little bit racist in the way that, like, all white people are just a little bit racist. Like, they're not especially so the way that some of the more virulent ones are, but you know, they got biases, they got prejudices. I have to get into arguments with them.
It's sometimes. How you spices like paprika.
Yeah, no, honestly, yes. No, that's not a bad analogy. Anyway, let's talk about Armed Girls Machiavellianism.
Oh, sure. I totally was not trying to avoid talking about Armed Girls Machiavellianism because it's a great program that I loved. I think we had a bit earlier about how execution can really make a wide margin of difference in a similar sphere of ideas. Or maybe we're drunk and we didn't mention that. I'm mentioning it now. Either way.
I can believe that we mentioned that.
I can believe
because
it too.
I'm drunk.
Two different manga creators and later anime studios arrived on the idea of, hey, let's play with gender interactions through a high school dictatorship. And in Armed Girl Machiavellianism, it came out wrong. Deeply wrong. Like Fishman and H.P. Lovecraft wrong.
In parts, interestingly wrong, and in other parts, amazingly just mundanely wrong. Just run-of-the-mill, oh man, you did this shit again wrong. I found myself less horrified by this series than I did disappointed by it.
Disappointment is definitely a powerful role in the armed girl Machiavellianism experience.
I feel like there's a universe where this show worked is the thing. That's the thing.
I think that's possible.
There was
Yeah, isn't it called Prison School? Like that's why we basically compared them, right?
Okay, swish. But no, I think that the elements present in this show could, in more competent hands, be turned into a better series. There's something. Maybe that series is just Kill la Kill.
Kill la Kill does. I mean, I guess it's less firmly entrenched into gender division, much as just general sexuality. But Kill la Kill does feel like a smarter version of like a battle anime
in school.
Battle anime in a school with a female dictator. Okay, that's just a very close. Okay, maybe Kill la Kill is just a better version of this, but
maybe this is less a Prison School ripoff and more a Kill la Kill ripoff.
Can we get a survey in here? Can we get a survey if it's
that.
More of a Prison School ripoff or a Kill la Kill? We need to investigate that. I think the guy protagonist, though, and his personality puts it more into Prison School.
Well, a little bit more than Prison School, but I'm not sure I entirely agree with that because he is very much of a separate archetype. Not so much in the Ryoko archetype, and not so much in the...
Oh, not so much in the Kyoshi archetype
Not
either.
so much in the Kyoshi archetype
Yeah, he's a different thing. In your defense, not so much generic as dull. Like, he is...
absolutely. Like, it's... He has a personality. It is a personality that I've seen a million times before, but he does have a personality.
A million instead of a billion. So there's territory left.
So he gets points for that at least.
Yeah, he's a delinquent. He has a sardonic demeanor. And
he's got a past, guys.
Yeah, he's got a past.
Oh man, he's
with the school's dictator.
Done things.
Who knows
in his backstory, and he doesn't want you to know about them.
So we've seen the first episode. So a game we can play that we can't play if we have to watch the whole thing, which I'm glad we can do now, is what did he do exactly? Was he just selling like Adderall in the bathroom?
God, I wish I had gone to that school. If he was. I think the little backstory on him, and by the way, I managed to memorize not a single character's name in this, so I'm going to be referring to them.
I have one name. I have literally one.
That's good. That's one more than me. I'm going to be referring to people based on their gimmick rather than their name, because I gotta tell you, man, no, I don't have their names. The
show is not very sticky in the human memory.
No, it's well, we'll get to why later, but so I guess this guy started a riot once, and a whole bunch of people got hurt, including him. He got hurt worst of all. That's what we hear about this guy.
Poor riot starter. He needs to work on his like more formal elements. We watch this delinquent enter the school, wide grin on his face, and then we meet the student council.
They all have swords or something.
They all have swords. Like I'm gonna pin this one down. Both schools are dealing with like
integration problems
between like two genders. In this show, they pitch it as the reaction was the student council arms all the swords. The average students get batons because I guess we needed a class thing within the school, within the gender thing. Because are we like
I don't think that I don't think that the creative staff was thinking that hard about this. In
You're right.
fairness.
They weren't thinking of it as a class thing. They were thinking of it as only our notable characters should have awesome swords. So the girls get swords, and one of them has a blind Zatoichi thing going, which is handled, in their defense, not offensively, just in a very thinly realized kind of way.
Which is to say boring.
Boring. Look, there are a lot of genres of bad, and one thing I will say for Armed Girl Machiavellianism is that relative to a lot of the sort of high school pervy shows we get into, it doesn't like morally Puritan pearl clutching offend kind of bad. It's more of just an intellectually insulting kind of please try harder feeling that you get. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, like I said, I think that there is a universe where this show works, where the elements in this show are good and funny.
I think that's true. Like there are shows that are like adjacent to this.
Here's the other thing. I have a hard time trying to figure out if this show is supposed to be funny or not.
I think it's really funny at times. I think its primary genre is battle manga.
Around halfway
anime,
through, it seems to decide that it's going to be a shonen fighting anime, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the tone that it strikes during this decision that it makes me feel like no, but also it wants to be a comedy. It just seems excessively confused. Is the word that I think I should use here.
Confused is a good word. I think that there is a pointed lack of control. I think they have things in mind in different scenes. They don't necessarily always control the elements within the scene to add to the conclusion that they want to reach.
No. Yeah.
Think of when they introduce the student council and you have rival mask girl. Her name is Rin. That's the one name I retained.
Rin. Is she... Okay, yeah, no, I remember Rin. She looks a little bit like Rei Ayanami because in any anime, one of your characters is going to look like Rei Ayanami. That's just statistics there.
It's a law of the world, just as it's a law during any given St. Patrick's Day, I will be near death. I'll once again reiterate, we have drank a lot in coming to this. I am holding more alcohol in my hands.
Did you actually pass me
yeah, good point. I'm sorry. Sam needs some of his medicine right now. Otherwise, he's going to start feeling that itch, and then we have to deal with the hospital.
This is actually my Guinness cup right now, but I'm going to cheat.
Pass over here. You're not drinking alone. My God, what is wrong with you?
Of course. No, I wouldn't want to be rude.
Manners are important. Manners are important in school. For example, our hero man... as he gets introduced to this zany setting.
His name. And you can't make me remember his name. I won't do it. They make a point of telling you his name once or twice and telling you that the accent is on the first syllable. I couldn't tell you what the syllable is because I remember the fact that the accent is on the first syllable more than the name itself. But I think it starts with N. So
N,
Mr. N. Right?
Cool, let's call him Neo. I love The Matrix. I'm a big Matrix fan. That's one of my favorite movies.
Pretty good movie, yeah.
He's learning that his world is fake. N, in moving through the space, meets another former delinquent, a stark warning who... I wrote this down. I want to get this just right, because when he meets this other former delinquent, there's a character our hero reacts to immediately with, a cross-dressing dude? It turns out the men in this high school... cross-dress to blend in under the council's authority. Is this the peak of comedy to you or action world building?
Oh god, I don't want the rest of this episode to be about transphobia. I really don't. That's not going to be fun for me. It's not going to be fun for you. It's not going to be fun for anyone listening.
He's hit the classic Todd in the Shadows problem. Minor shout out. I enjoy his music reviews.
Yeah, no, me as well. And I'm feeling the pain that he feels sometimes when yeah, we need to talk about this. I don't want to. You don't want to listen to it, but here it fucking is, and I'd be remiss if I ignored it.
I'm not sure this makes fucking human sense before you even hit the whole trans politics layer.
Well, let's go into it first. Let's just make sure that everyone understands it. The idea is in
armed girl world,
as plain as words as I can make it. Once the female sector of the student body armed itself, the male sector were, I guess, presented with a choice where they could either go on as they were or begin cross-dressing. This is presented as a joke. This is presented very much as a gag.
I guess in the gag, I should say that they have bigger than normal heads and they're super hyper made up.
Super bigger than normal heads. They have very exaggerated chins and cheekbones. The whole thing is just
true.
The whole thing is just there to make it very clear that no, these are definitely men who are very much pretending in this context to be women, or are forced to pretend that they are. I don't know how to explain it without accidentally saying...
It's true. It feels like you want to sort of dip into the 4chan half of your vocabulary and just sort of describe how...
I do, because this show seems to want me to as well. I don't know what I can say about this other than it's abhorrent. It's not very funny. The main character, the first person he interacts with in this show is a large
He's like a large former delinquent. He's got like a big head where they sort of pronounce the chin cleft, and
for a good amount of time, for an uncomfortable amount of time, they're talking about how this girl, at least we believe at first, has such masculine features and how this is a hilarious thing.
I encourage you to remember the song Dude Looks Like a Lady.
Or Lola.
Or Lola. Lola is also on that spectrum.
My favorite song about transphobia.
Yeah. And the only one to get a Weird Al remix, so
yeah, no, I mean, like, good for the Kinks. Again, I could go on for a good hour and a half, 2 hours about the transphobia that just like decides to be there. It's like they didn't even need to do this. This element of the show didn't even need to be there, but he figured, nah, it's good for a laugh, so he puts this in. And
I think once again it comes down to like this lack of control. Like you could have hit this theme of like these guys basically like walking around the school kissing the feet of these girls who have like weapons that they can murder them with, right? But he decides that how far he needs to push is to get his idea across because he doesn't understand.
Is the idea that the lowest form of masculinity is femininity, and that's bad. That seems to be real the wacky party here. Yeah. So there's that just going on in the show in the background, just in case.
I'm gonna take this back to Neo for a second. In the show, the student council does have 5, 6, the number's off of my head. Let's say 5 discrete designs between these women.
Yes, the character designs. Let me jump in here. So now I need to talk about the boring parts about why this show is bad. We start with the character designs, and we watched the first episode of this right after we watched the first episode of Prison School, a show with just really lovingly designed characters.
Like, it does a good job of both invoking what you assume based on what you've seen before and making its own territory.
Kind of like giving its own territory, subverting your expectations just a little bit. The character designs in Prison School are absolutely spot on. Then you get to Machiavelli.
Armed Girls Machiavellianism.
Thank you. And immediately, you were struck by how pedestrian this show looks. Like, I'm starting here with just the character designs, but really, it's everything about the look and feel of this show. I think the first thing I noticed was the color palette and just how much it looks like any sort of, like, harem, high school anime, whatever.
It really does not distinguish itself on a sort of screenshot-to-screenshot basis.
Oh, absolutely not. It can be confused for literally any other show. Whereas Prison School, oh no, you know exactly what you're watching. The character designs themselves look at home in basically any sort of light novel adaptation.
Depending on how deep in the anime hole you are, I would say that the thing of Armed Girl Machiavellianism, character designs, and its overall look is that when you go through the shows of the season chart, you could easily flip by it without even processing it in your brain.
Oh, absolutely.
Versus the other snapshots in that chart. It is just
like a show that happened that, like, you could go through the season chart and completely forget about it as you're looking at it in favor of, I don't know, like the second season of Mob Psycho 100.
Should we do Mob Psycho at some point? You think
we should. Oh, God.
It's like, okay.
That one's a whole fucking thing.
It is a show. Okay, so Mob Psycho 100 is an interesting point for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because normally, me and this guy are in super concordance of what to watch. And basically, the show's setup and feedback sound super good to me, but the animation hurts his fucking eyes. So I'm wondering, like,
it's just so intentionally ugly, and like, well, I'm reacting the way you seem to have intended me to react, and I cannot fucking... I'm having a hard time. No, guys, I really want to like this show. I really don't want to. And I will find a way around it. I
don't
guess,
think he's necessarily.
It just looks so goddamn ugly.
I don't think it's necessarily wrong, but I dip into a big pool of Western animation too, and there have been shows that, like, while not masterfully drawn, have still had a interesting core underneath that.
I guess if I can like Rick and Morty, which looks pretty goddamn ugly, I guess
Rick and Morty does look pretty ass.
It looks. No, I would.
In fact, I would say that Adult Swim has a legacy of shows.
Of shows that look very, very unattractive. I don't want to talk or be
unattractive is such a much more eloquent word than ass. Like, it's so weird. Like, I went to, like, the fucking fancy schools, but you have the actual, real human words for these things. It almost tells you the whole system is artificial.
Artificial, yeah. Perhaps.
What if we burned down most elite institutions?
What if we burned down Lori Loughlin?
I think you can cancel someone for a second generation after that. At least that's where I am, personally, in my heart.
Like, I think at that point, we've done what we set out to do. I think at that point, I'm just about satisfied. Having gone to, like, an objectively worse school. Like, grandchildren, that's good. We're about even there. Fuck, I forgot where I was. Oh, right, no, we were at the animation. No, the animation is fucking harm tier. It looks like it would belong in any fucking show with a waifu of the season. And I don't mean that in a good, Kaguya-sama way. I mean that in a really, like, really bad...
Yeah, at a later point...
Do I badmouth Zero 2 right now?
When he says, like, a bad harem show, let me draw a line in the sand. He likes some harem shows. I dislike pretty much all of them because of my own disorders. But what I mean to say is that there are shows that he thinks are good within that genre, and this show fails to meet the line in the sand. Lower in my opinion, but still there, that those shows he likes.
Also, they don't get into it in the first episode. I can only imagine that this show is a harem anime as well. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't want to get all fucking CinemaSins here and decide things about this thing that it is.
If you want to take one thing away from this podcast so far, kind of fuck CinemaSins, I guess.
Fuck CinemaSins, yeah.
Actually, no, not kind of. I actually do hate that shit. Like, we're actually folding more good things into the show because CinemaSins eats so much ass.
But it has so many of, like, the tropes, right? Even just the visual tropes of a harem anime that I am tempted to group into that.
I think it does that thing a bad show does where it wants us to remember the good times. Like, the good things within the spectrum that you've enjoyed. Like, you are watching this and it says, like, hey, don't you remember that warm, comfortable place you were in during, like, Love Hina or some shit?
I was in a pretty warm, comfortable place during Love Hina. Like, yeah, a little bit trash, but, like, I had fun.
A little bit trash, but it was less trod ground. Like, at least you could think, like, the guy was, like, making some shit up.
It's like, oh, man, this is bad, but it's new.
Bad, but it's new. That is a...
And at least it was funny occasionally. This was, this show's sense of humor, I got it. There were jokes that... Here's the thing. I will give this show credit where it was due.
Mm-hmm.
The sense of humor that it has did not make me feel like this show thought I was a moron. Like, the jokes, I got them. They weren't very funny, but I did not feel as though it was condescending to me.
I agree with that. Given the range of things we've covered in this show so far, I will just triple underline, this show's better than Handshakers.
Oh, this show's way better than Handshakers.
Yeah, it's way better than Handshakers.
2 letter grades better than Handshakers. I'd rate this like
if you're
maybe a C.
If you're still doing the Dante thing, like, I don't know, what's in the first 2 layers? Who even gives a fuck? Well, one of the first, like, 3 layers of hell this goes to. Not like...
It's gonna, like, face a pretty terrible eternity, but, like, not the worst eternity.
Yeah, this show doesn't go to deep hell.
But I want to finish up talking about the base level, basic film criticism problems this show has. Like, it's poorly edited, just... in general, and I could talk about this, but really the cuts are not where they should be. The scenes are not as long as they should be. The direction of the camera doesn't make sense most of the time.
It is a problem.
That sort of thing.
In understanding how film editing works and feeling good or bad about it, for a fun bad movie time, to understand bad editing, watch the movie Birdemic. Because I didn't understand what bad editing felt like when you watch something until I saw Birdemic.
I feel like Birdemic's a little bit of an easy target. Or it's
no, I'm not saying. I'm not. We're not reviewing Birdemic. I'm saying.
Well, not that. Not so much that, but like you go into Birdemic knowing that it's bad, right? I feel like there's a better target that you could hit right here, like a film that is not universally understood to be a train wreck, like Bohemian Rhapsody. It has real bad fucking editing.
Okay, you know what? I think Sam's right, actually. I'm going to surrender. You win. Watch the movie Bohemian Rhapsody. Think of its strengths and weaknesses.
And
in its
just
weakness column,
where they decide to cut and why it makes watching the film just kind of awkward in general. And realize that this is not a joke film the way Birdemic is. The lead actor won an Oscar for this film, and yet. But yeah, this anime, Machiavellianism, has a whole lot of the same problems.
Like, the way that scenes are clipped together is not necessarily arranged towards optimally telling a story, or telling a story, period. Like, I think of the transitions between, like, the council deliberating between each other and Rin from the council going to go meet, I think we agreed to call him Neo.
Sure, Neo sounds fine.
Neo sounds fine. There's a gag, and it struck me during the fight. And that's a thing that would have worked if they did it once or twice. But because it is specifically badly edited, it doesn't land. Where they name Rin's techniques, which the effect that has...
they name it so fucking hard, too. Oh, man, they have some other character watching this fight naming these techniques. And when a fight is confusing, the best thing you can say about it is that at least it's not boring. This fight that took up about most of the latter half of the first episode of the series was boring because they could not shut the fuck up about what was happening. They couldn't trust that we understood what was happening. They had to add little fucking things into this fight to make it more interesting, I guess, was their idea here, but all it did was slow it the fuck down. At one point, Neo puts on a pair of, you could call them cestises, just gloves that have some amount of armor sewn into them.
Gloves that say, I will not get stabbed in the show.
I will not get stabbed in the show, right? And instead of just letting the viewer see that these are armored gloves, right? And this is how he fights, right? He fights with his hands against swords and he wins. That's the idea? No. We pause for a good long while and we talk about...
We need to underline the fact that it's impressive that a human being blocked a sword with armor gloves wielded by another human being.
But since you or I are apparently just not smart enough to work that out for ourselves, even if he demonstrated this ability to do so, after having taken one or two licks and decided, okay, I guess I'll go from 1% of my power to 10% of my power here.
There is a layer in flawed writing beyond what they tell you in high school or college writing workshops. Telling instead of showing isn't the worst sin. The worst sin is showing and then telling.
And then telling. Yeah, no, that's
because
that's
they
not a bad
show the
point.
thing and then they tell the thing and then they underline and say, "Hey, dip fuck, do you understand the content that's before you?"
Get it? This is the thing.
So he and Rin, you know, the itchy and scratchy thing. They fight.
Fight.
The itchy and scratchy show.
Rain show.
They fight, and you haven't really gained anything from it other than their, I guess, grudging admiration. Is she gonna be like his lead? I don't know if we're gonna do a second episode of this show. We try to keep the sort of docket varied.
We can, I guess.
I don't know.
It didn't make me feel pain the way that Owari no Seraph does.
Honestly, 24 shows come out in a season, and I feel like I want to cast this net wide because there's a lot of...
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
There's a lot of shit that's good, a lot of shit that's bad. Just a lot of shit. A lot of shit is out there.
How the fuck are we, like, 3/5 of the way through? Like, I think... no, 3/4, I think, is, like, the right term to use. Through that... Jesus.
Shh. It's fine. It's fine. He's referring to a bottle of honey Jack Daniels that we are, I want to say, 4/5 of the way through.
I want to try to bring this home, if I can. And let me see how I do here.
I believe in you. I believe in your powers.
As 3/4 of the way in the bag as I am. I think the beginning of Prison School and the beginning of
Armed girl Machiavellianism.
Thank you. These shows start with a conversation about gender politics, right?
Gender politics in a specific age bracket. Yeah.
In a specific age bracket, right? They aim to make some statement or at the very least some joke about it.
That is very true.
And one of them understands what it's talking about, and one of them just fucking doesn't.
If I could offer creative advice in a broad stroke, I'm a writer, successful, fail, I don't know. I have some publication tags, whatever. People can smell from a mile away whether or not you give a fuck about what you're talking about. And when I watched Prison School, I felt like he had something to say. I felt like he gave a shit about what he was talking about.
No, I absolutely believe that this guy felt something about what he was writing.
And I will say, watching Armed Girl on Machiavellianism, I did not feel that the guy who wrote the comic was a moron. What I felt was that he did not give a single flying fuck about the high school chapter of his life. Which is fine, because you live a whole life after high school. More important things happen to you.
Write about that.
Write about that. Write about your workplace. Write about your 20s. Write about your 30s. Write about your 40s. If you don't give a shit about high school, don't write about high school. You lived so much life before and after that. Well, focus on what you care about.
There's no argument to be made that this is anime, and that's where the money is. But we can talk about that at a later date.
That is, however, a misreading of market forces, because the high school market is completely flooded. Competent executions out of that will still make their money.
I see your point. Yeah, I mean, no. You're right. I will concede that point. And we didn't even get started on how this guy didn't even fucking read The Prince and deigned to put Machiavelli in the title of this series.
Dude, I went to this series like a moron, like thinking like, oh shit, there's gonna be some discourses on Livy thing. He didn't even read The Prince. Like, he didn't even read the undergrad circuit level of fucking Machiavelli. Sam has an excellent fucking point here. But it has been wonderful being with you people today on St. Patrick's Day, in which I am dead.
I've been Mute Monkey,
a.k.a. Sam Ago. I've been Blind Monkey, a.k.a. Denard Dale.
Yeah.
And thank you all for joining us. Yo, what do you think it's like in hell with Trevelyan?
Hopefully not pleasant. I hope that he feels like he's starving every day of his eternity down there.
Yeah, it feels like you have to get a little more creative than the whole like standard like fire, pitchfork, sodomy kind of treatment. Like, he did something very specific.
You know, it could be that the devil is thinking that he's trying to reform Charles Trevelyan's moral character, right?
You're right. So he like deprives him of like oxygen and food over time. It's like, I'm trying to teach you how to be.
It's like, because you're all Protestant and whatever, right? And it's like, no, that's actually just the wrong way to be. I guess Catholic was the right way this whole time.
Yeah, there was only one religion that needed food. Who knew? Like, Trevelyan knew.
It wasn't yours, Trevelyan.
I guess that you and I were wrong about how like human morals worked all this time. I'm glad we could clarify that.
As it turns out, like you could dress genocide up like, you know, a
like daycare, like it's
daycare, but
like daycare for other demographics of human. It's great.